Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and Season 3 of Diablo 4. And welcome back, fellow Necromancers. It's a weird season for us where everyone's sort of teleporting and dashing through the traps while we walk around them. Golem has been buffed, but shadow damage over time and therefore shadow minion builds were nerfed. Bone Spirit's been revived, but it's so unbelievably demanding on essence that it's going to require a proper endgame build to really fuel. And blood builds, in particular Lance with a new unique, is looking interesting, so we're looking forward to testing that. But one constant remains true as always: Bone Spear. Bone Spear being stupidly strong and one of the strongest leveling builds in the game. The raw burst is top tier, leading to fast clear times, but also endgame obviously is very powerful. This combined with a new construct companion means you're able to spread your tempest fast, stacking up that DPS and benefiting from the many resources and crit that provides. So it's proved to continue to be an incredible power leveler and kick ass in single target, with some minor swaps depending on what the content you're about to do is, both in the skill tree and the construct stones. You're going to be good to go quickly. And that is the main point of this video and guide, an actual build that you can use while you're leveling to efficiently get to level 100. This isn't based on theory, but actual testing as I grind through these levels, and we're going to showcase all of that and explain my reasoning. Now with this build and an early version of it, at level 54 I was able to solo Elias and unlock World Tier 4, no problem at all. I actually did it first try and my attempt was really messy too. This is because of the construct and the new abilities that it provides, and also just the strength of the build itself. At that early stage, I was making use of Iron Maiden to give myself basically a load of essence regen during the fight whenever minions spawned, which he does multiple times throughout the fight, and I was using the Protect Governing Stone from the construct, providing me with a nice shield buffer for all the hits. This prevented me from ever being one-shot, which is kind of what stops you from clearing this fight, because, you know, we're playing Diablo 4 and sometimes you dodge a missile and Diablo 4 says, no you didn't, and it one-shots you. As long as you can tank those at least once without dying, you'll be fine. Through the build, I'll explain what I'm doing when considering single target versus mob clear for leveling, but this was just to quickly show you that while under-leveled at level 54, I was able to solo unlock World Tier 4, no problem. Alright, so we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to be going through this pretty quick to get to the point and be concise. We're still using our basic of bone splinters, and that only comes in when we really need the extra crit chance and the resource gen. Obviously maxing out Bone Spear and going for paranormal, full on living energy and imperfectly balanced as usual, and of course we still max out Hued Flesh to generate corpses, especially in boss fights. On the next tree we're taking 3 Grim Harvest and Fueled by Death for the extra damage and essence gen, as well as 1 point into Corpse Explosion, just so that we have a way to pop that Fueled by Death, as well as the essence gen that provides. On the next tree, we are in our mob clear version, so that's 1 point into Iron Maiden and Enhanced Maiden. This means Iron Maiden doesn't actually cost any essence, and it actually generates 5 per enemy cursed. So as you place this on a group of mobs, you actually get a ton of essence. This is absolutely phenomenal for mob clear, and why we run it in mob clear. Alternatively, you will take the points out of that, put them into Decrepify, and go for Abhorrent Decrepify, likely by taking 1 point out of Inspiring Leader to do so, for a single target version. This is also going to have more damage reduction, which will matter if you're pushing harder content, but let's swap that back over to Iron Maiden and put the points back. I've got 3 out of 3 on Death's Embrace just for the extra damage reduction that's been helping me, but if you're completely fine, you can put this in Death's Reach for more damage instead. We have 1 point in Corpse Tendrils, and we take that to Plague for the vulnerable generation. We take 3 out of 3 Serration, Compound Fracture, and Evulsion for our main bone passives. On the ultimate tree, it's 3 out of 3 Standalone and Memento Mori as always, maxing out Bone Spear and going for Ossified Essence. With the remaining 2 points to play with, I put them into Inspiring Leader because attack speed means more Bone Spears. More Bone Spears hitting more vulnerable enemies means more Essence Gen with our aspects, but you could consider taking 1 point out of this and putting it into Rapid Ossification just to help with the Bone Shield cooldown. It's up to you. For the Book of the Dead, it's the same as always. Skeletal Skirmishers for the crit strike chance. Skeletal Mages, I'm still going vulnerable because it's not worth it for the extra max essence yet, but it'll be something I consider long term in a true endgame build. And then Golem is Iron for the critical strike damage increase. On the topic of Paragon points then, we are still leveling. I'm just shy level 80, but I will be covering what my plans are and showing you as best I can. So for the starter board, we're picking up both Prime and Resilience by this method. Since in Torment, you're going to need lots of resistance, and max life is always nice, but we're min-maxing this to activate Corporeal, even though it's not upgraded to level 15. And that's going to be a big topic here, where we actually don't have our glyphs leveled to 15 yet, because we're all leveling. Corporeal gives you a straight 10% times increased physical damage, which is important because Bone Spear and bone damage is physical damage. And also it increases the magic nodes within range, so when I extend this, it's it's going to hit things like the extra damage here, the extra armors here and here. But until that's extended, this is my min-max solution. Then we go to our second board, our first extension, which should be, as always, Bone Graft. You can rotate this however you like, but I wanted the glyph early where I've got Essence. Essence provides straight crit strike damage, and even more to those that are not healthy as we're doing DPS to them. This is fantastic. To achieve that, we need 25 dex, and this is how I've done that when it's not level 15 and therefore extended. But I will be committing more points here to pick up things like this magic node and more dex around it once we actually increase the radius. We shoot up to the top right to pick up Calcified and the nodes around that, as well as reinvigorating the nodes. We come up to the right and get Entomb, making sure to pick up the critical strike damage with bone skills magic nodes that are here. We don't care about potion healing, and obviously the legendary node itself. Back down, we come up to the left from the glyph to go to our next board extension, which is Scent of Death. This as our third board is important because the rare nodes like Corrective can be phenomenal. Lots of extra critical strike damage, but you need, say, 360 willpower. The later that this comes, the more the number increases. So we've got Scent of Death as the third board. Also, the survivability that Scent of Death provides is really helpful. So I rotate it and get Scent of Death as quick as I can coming down and around. I've also got Ruin and the nodes around that, extra damage to healthy enemies and crit strike damage. Obviously very good. Coming to the left, we grab the actual glyph where I have Sacrificial. This is going to be a moving node that's probably going to go to board 4 if I find it works better there. But for now, with no radius extension, it's level 1. I'm able to get it active, which means 10% times increased damage when we have no active minions. Major. Also, it's another plus 30% bonus to all magic nodes, so it will increase the armor and the damage to injured enemies if we extend the radius. But that's why I'm interested for the fourth board, because we've got things like lots of extra damage to elites and resistance to elements that could enhance. In any case, it doesn't take much to get it active, as you can see. Then I've been coming up and through, picking up Corrective on the way, and of course the 3 critical strike damage nodes that lead us there. And that brings us to the fourth board, which is obviously, as usual, Flesh Eater. I've got this rotated so I can get to Flesh Eater as fast as possible, and I'm probably going to be going through Stifle as usual, which also offers some crit strike damage benefits too. When I come around to the actual glyph and get that active, I'm looking at Exploit, which I've nearly got to level 15 in prep, but again, I might swap this. I might put Sacrificial there and Exploit here, depending on how things go. When I finally get to my fifth board, I'm probably going to find a way to work in Imbiber as usual. This is a lot of extra damage while you're healthy, but it requires some serious investment to actually get this working. So while we're leveling, it just doesn't really fit. And besides, you're not going to be healthy all the time when you don't have all the DI you do later. This is my cost-effective Paragon board and the plans that I have for the immediate future. Once I actually get this glyph going, I'm going to be buffing things out where I'm missing lots of important nodes that I've been ignoring. Okay, time to talk Construct. As you can see, this is my default setup. We have Flash of Adrenaline and we have Tempest. Tempest is actually nuts for us. Basically puts a charge on an enemy, dealing damage to them and over time ticks of damage. If that enemy is killed, Tempest will spread to another enemy, dealing extra damage, and that stacks up. So as you clear mobs, this damage actually skyrockets. Each tick of damage though, and there will be many, is very valuable because we're running resource support on this. Gain 2 primary resource when the supporting skill first deals damage. So as it spreads, it generates more resource for us, and we're very resource starved. I'm also taking arcing support, which causes it to hit multiple targets at once. And as you can see, it actually will hit up to 3 when I get to the next rank. This spreads the damage and scales it faster. It's insane for mob clear, but also good for single target. I've got efficiency support on that note, which gives us extra crit strike chance on the targets affected by Tempest. So that's where it's also good for single target. But if I was doing single target, I'd take out arcing support, and I do slot in duration support since that increases how long the dot actually lasts, giving it more opportunities in that circumstance. Alternative to that, we are running Flash of Adrenaline, of course, a major buff, increasing your damage dealt by, in this case, 13% times 30 seconds, and that scales when we rank this up. It's just a straight you do more damage, which is pretty damn good. If you need survivability, I've got 2 options for you in the form of Protect, providing you a barrier, or the sometimes really helpful Auto Defense, which generates a sort of blue bubble around the actual construct, protecting you from a load of projectiles. This can be great in, say, the vaults, where there's lots of traps, but if you're underleveled and struggling, getting rid of the damage rather than trying to reduce it and not really doing anything with a weak barrier can actually be awesome. But if I want max damage, I'm going Flash of Adrenaline. In this case, I'm running Tactical Support to reduce the cooldown so that it happens more often. I'm also taking some defensives in Safeguard, giving me some damage reduction, and Fortify support just to give me some Fortify and therefore more survival. It's still a work in progress though, we're doing lots of testing, so check back in the future. Time for the all-important gear section. This is what I'm running right now based on what I've got, and I'll explain some alternatives. Top to bottom, we have Deathless Visage, which is of course the helm slot, increasing our damage because it's leaving this kind of echoing explosion as we throw those bone spears, and that damage is increased based on our critical strike damage bonus, which will get better and better as we have better gear. If you do not have this, I would recommend you run a defensive aspect such as Might. On the chest, I've got Disobedience, a standard pick for a nice defensive aspect on a chest, leg or head slot. On the gloves, we're running Serration to increase our damage. This is based on a key passive, so you need more essence whenever you're casting bone spears for them to do more damage, so it's a good idea to never let your essence fall below 50%. Shielding Storm goes on the legs, since we're using Bone Storm, this is incredible. And on the boots, since we've lost our unstoppable Metamorphosis dash, we are running once again Wind Striker for the movement speed this provides. You could go for a DPS option like say Penitent Greaves, but I much prefer the movement speed while mob clearing and leveling. On the weapon, the two-hand weapon in particular, of course it's Splintering to maximize the potential of our Bone Spear and generating the vulnerable. But on the amulet, we have Grasping Veins, giving us extra crit strike chance whenever we tendril, and those that we do tendril, we're dealing extra crit strike damage to them. On the rings, we have the Ring of Sacrilegious Soul. The incredible utility and quality of life this provides cannot be understated during mob clear and leveling, automatically triggering your corpse explosion for you so you don't have to waste your time doing it, which means, hey, free corpse tendrils without a cooldown. That alone is the reason to use this, but also the corpse explosions and all of that, not having to worry about that, it's wonderful. If you don't have this unique ring yet, then I would recommend the Sacrificial Ring to further increase your damage, or run Torment so that you can help your essence regen and therefore cast Bone Spear more often, which can be very good while we're struggling for resource gen during this leveling. Obviously on the other ring though, we're still running Exposed Flesh, which you can get from the Codex now, since this came as part of the season journey. In chapter 2 specifically, that's when you get it. Just this can absolutely carry, especially when you're hitting many mobs, but if you feel yourself needing more essence gen, always consider Torment on the second ring. One last thing I want to mention for the aspects is this new one, the Juggernaut aspect. You gain a huge amount of armor, but your evade has a 100% increased cooldown. The reason I'm not running this is because I don't need more survivability. Disobedience on its own is doing the job. Shielding Storm is really kind of pushing me over the edge. This is going to be very important in the true endgame when I'm pushing tier 100s and maybe doing whatever the gauntlet's going to be, but as my only mobility as a Necromancer is my pathetic little dash, I don't want to make that even worse when I don't need to. However, do know that I value this aspect quite highly for the raw armor that it provides, and I would swap out Shielding Storm right now if I needed to. So that's the gear. What about affixes? Well, it's the standard stuff. Offensively, you need at least enough crit chance to be critting all the time, so you need it everything you can get it, which basically means your gloves and your rings. These need crit strike chance as much as you can get, but also max essence is going to be great. The more essence you have, the more damage you do with your bone spears. After that, crit strike damage is always fantastic and obviously a basis of a lot of your build, and things like vulnerable damage, core skill damage after that, these are fantastic too. I also recommend you look for essence gen and essence cost reduction wherever possible, like on the amulet, and attack speed, certainly on the gloves if you can snag it. The most important two slots are the gloves and your amulet, because the gloves can get ranks of bone spear, which you must have at the max rank of 4, and your amulet is going to want the Evulsion passive, since this is going to provide us with the most damage. An extra 15% times increased critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies is nuts. Defensively then, you want the standard picks: damage reduction, armor and health, damage reduction from close and far or while injured, and any element resistances that you might need, that you might be lacking on, especially while leveling in Torment. In terms of gems, it's the standard stuff: max life on the armor, critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies on the weapon, and then whatever resistance you're currently lacking on your jewelry. If somehow you're overcapped, you can run skulls for armor instead. But there you have it. That is the classic Bone Spear enhanced by the Construct in Season 3 and leveling into Endgame. This includes the important swaps depending on what you're doing. We still need as much resource gen as we can sneak into this build without losing too much damage. And since I'm relying on the Codex in these early days, it can be a struggle. So having to use basics and manage the resources more than just spamming only Bone Spears does happen right now. But if you're just hardcore farming mob clear and dungeons just to get to level 100 as fast as possible, you'll be fine. Once we reach those final builds and ideal affixes in single target, we're going to absolutely dominate. And if anything, because of the Construct, we just deal more damage and have slightly more resource gen, which is nice. I just want to emphasize that I'm definitely looking at the Bone Spear Bone Spirit combo build, because that looks very promising in the true endgame. But that's the thing, it's going to require so many resources, proper affixes, a real setup, and we're talking about power leveling to 100 as fast as possible, and I just think this is easier and better. But I will be back to cover both Bone Spirit very soon. But that's the plan and the build for now. I hope this was the update you needed during your own leveling. Until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.